There are a few things that get me physically ill listening to or seeing. But one of the things that will definitely do it is whenever Cyril Ramaphosa speaks, it's like the man just doesn't, he has no concept of his image or the impression that he makes on other people. He's sort of clueless. He goes through the world, I think, imagining himself to be a great president, to be the kind of man that South Africa wants, to be the kind of leader that South Africa cares about. I don't know. It just genuinely feels like this man has no self concept of the impression that he makes on the people around him. Of course, over the weekend, we had the Liberation Movement Party, where all the liberation movements from around Africa that has overseen the complete and utter destruction of their own economies and countries got together to celebrate the destructions of their own countries and economies. And of course, it was hosted in South Africa because we are trying to become number one destructor of economies and economic systems in Africa. But effectively, our president, Mr. Ramaphosa, spoke at this, as he would, of course, do. And as a great revolutionary and a great communist, he had a couple of things to say that I thought we just highlight for all of you. Okay, so at this, he said the following. We must ask ourselves, are our movements still vehicles for justice? No, of course not. Or have they become platforms for status and convenience? Considering the fact that every single minister in South Africa is paid obscene amounts of money. In fact, the ministers in South Africa earn in the top 1% by far in South Africa. You guys are richer than literally most people, considering the fact that your friends eat very well while the rest of the country burns. I would say the answer to this is also a big no. And then he goes, it was Che Guevara who said, the true revolutionary is guided by a great feeling of love. It is impossible to think of a genuine revolutionary lacking this quality. Che, of course, not being a man known as love, Che saw the downfall of Cuba, hundreds of thousands of people dead in Cuba, starving. So when Che says that the fundamental driver is love, that love, your love really hurts, but never mind, right? So let us lead with love, is what Ramaphosa gets to. Love for the landless, okay? For the excluded. Well, for women whose struggles continue on all fronts. For the workers who are told to wait while wealth multiplies elsewhere. And the youth who are told to wait for tomorrow. Okay, Mr. Ramaphosa, let's take a look at these claims that you make. And how has that gone in South Africa since you got to power? Apart from the first period from 1994 until 2008, since 2008 onwards, you have overseen the complete decline under Jacob Zuma. The peak economic growth was 1.9%, brought about by load shedding, specifically as a result of 1998. The ANC and Thabo Mbeki has warned, hey, the Eskom will not survive if you continue to connect more people to homes without building actual power stations. And as your want to do in the ANC is ignore the problem until it actually becomes a bigger problem that you can no longer ignore. And in 2008, that becomes the bigger problem that can no longer be ignored. But even Jacob Zuma, as thievingly dog crap as he was able to oversee 1.9% economic growth. You then take over in 2018, and since then, your peak economic growth has been 0.9%. You have overseen the destruction of the entire South African economy. Not only do we now have more people on social grants, in other words, people who don't have jobs, than ever before, but we also have a tax base that is consistently year on year shrinking. So you are now trying to get water out of a rock. So when we actually look at your speech and we look at the realities of your speech, we realize that these are two very different things. You say the right things, Mr. President, but you never actually do any of the right things. Goes on to say, our unity as liberation movements is not just symbolic. No, you guys are stealing, really. It is strategic. The enemies of our people are reorganizing. Imperialism has rebranded, but it is no less exploitative. Multinationals control our mines. You sold it to them. In fact, most mines in South Africa are owned by Ukrainians and Russians. You sold it to them. What are you talking about, right? Our data. Yeah, because you don't build anything. You don't have the electricity to do so. No one is stopping you from building your own data centers. You just don't allow anyone to do it without BE bullshit. So it's really your fault, right? Our narratives. No, your narrative is that you're a good president. No one controls that because no one believes it. Or even our elections. Now he's saying that their elections is rigged by the. Okay, I think we're starting to get closer to the ANC maybe doing some crazy shit in the next election as they start to realize this. All of this, by the way, I'm seeing a pattern within the ANC of them sort of laying the groundwork for basically seizing power, even if they were to lose the next election. And this sort of plays into that. Debt has replaced the chains of slavery. Mr. Ramaphosa, you and your government has continuously entered into debt where the whites and Dawie Rood specifically have warned you not to. So when you continuously say that, hey, we're being made slaves by all these foreigners or whatever, no, you're not. You're doing it by yourself. The IMF isn't forcing you to make debt, right? Or to lend money from them. The World Bank isn't forcing you to lend money from them. It's your own expenditures. It's the fact that you can't run an economy for shit that is forcing you to borrow money from the IMF, from the World Bank. You just did it like a month ago. Another 7 billion rand just borrowed from the IMF for reasons unknown. Well, not unknown. You've run such a massive amount of debt that the debt to GDP means we pay 1.1 to 1.2 billion rand a day in interests on our debt already. And that's why you have to continuously. But none of this is anyone else's fault but your own. But as is wont for the ANC and liberations movements around the world, it's always easier to blame other people. In South Africa, one of the cleanest lies that is sold to the people of South Africa is that all of the failures of the ANC is the result of apartheid and white people. White people are the problem. To the black people watching, no, white people are not your problem. We as white people are not in charge. We have not been in charge since 1994. We can track the downfall of South Africa and tie it directly to decisions made by the ANC since 1994. If the government continued to do what Nelson Mandela and Thabo Mbeki did, South Africa would now be a very different country. But you guys voted for Jacob Zuma, and Jacob Zuma changed everything. This is not on us. This is on you. And many of you don't seem to remember that. Although I do realize that there's a ton of black people who don't vote for the ANC and hate the ANC. You guys are my brothers. We agree on all of this. Absolutely. But to those that still vote for the ANC, that still vote for the EFF, you don't have a clue what you're doing. And you're basically bringing about even more pain and suffering upon yourself because the EFF has no interest in not doing what the ANC is doing. In fact, they want to do more of what the ANC is doing. That's their only real problem. But now, let us renew our ideological clarity. Let us reclaim the narrative of transformation. Let us reaffirm our commitment to international solidarity, not as a memory of the past, but as a living force for change in the present and future. This will require that we double down on our current approach to international relations within the Southern African region. That approach is informed. I can't even keep reading this. Fundamentally, all he basically says here is that trade between African nations is what will make us all rich. We just have to keep trading with each other and then we'll all be very, very rich. Of course, that's just complete falsity. South Africa's economy is the largest on the African continent and it's not even close. It genuinely isn't even close. South Africa cannot simply survive by trading with African nations where the majority of those nations are dirt poor, right? What does Zimbabwe have to offer South Africa? 90% of the Zimbabwean people live in abject poverty. What are they going to buy? What are we making that they will buy? Are we going to export cars to Zimbabwe? Are these people that can't even afford food going to buy our vehicles suddenly? What about the rest of Africa? These people don't want the things we have because they just want food. That's ultimately the only thing they care about. And can they even afford to pay the prices of food that South Africa would have to charge in order to make money? No, of course they cannot. South Africa cannot simply survive. I'm not saying that we shouldn't. We should do business with the rest of Africa because we should help the rest of Africa develop as well through trade and through business. But this government is not the one that's going to do that. And Mr. Ramaphosa, you have your head so far up your own ass that you constantly smell shit. And every single time you eat something different and the flavor sort of changes, you think you're onto a good idea. No, Mr. President, it's still just your own bowel movements and it's still just shit. Maybe sit down, shut up, and let the rest of us fix the country. Because every single time you speak, you make things worse for everyone. Let me know in the comment section down below how you feel about this insane president that we have here in South Africa, as well as the government and the stupidity of our government. I'd love to read your thoughts. It really does help. So if you like what I do, you think more people should hear what I have to say, please hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and leave a comment because YouTube does reward engagement. To all of the people that are supporting this channel, being members and also patrons, I really appreciate you. If you want to become a member or a patron, just hit the join button below this video or the link in the description down below where you get to watch all videos ad-free over on Patreon. As always, I'll see all of you in the next one. Peace.